All right. Well, thanks for joining, everyone. This is for those. This is the sixth part of a six-part speaker series that we launched earlier this year, all around lean enterprise. So how large companies can innovate like a startup. After this, we are going to continue with this series, but we're going to be launching something new and exciting next year. So stay tuned. If you guys aren't already a member, join our official group on meetup.com/LeanEnterpriseToronto. We'll make announcements there. We also give away stuff from time to time. We just gave away a few $300 value tickets to the Art of event, which happened a few months ago. We'll also be launching a full site soon, where we'll have all this content there for you guys to go back and read and watch and all that sort of stuff. So that's it. So before we get started, two things. One, I just want to thank all our sponsors. So we have Steam Whistle, obviously keeping us hydrated in Panago, which is great. Climax Media, whose space we're in today. And I should, I guess, introduce myself. My name is Corey. I'm one of the co-organizers here. I work for Climax. We're a web development agency. Carlos here is one of the other co-organizers. He works for TELUS, is responsible for launching lean stuff within TELUS. And then we have one other co-organizer who's in France right now as well. Thanks for all that. And then we also have some books to give away, a couple Lean Enterprise books. So if you guys tweet or Instagram during the event, just use the hashtag LeanEnterpriseTO, and we'll pick two winners from Twitter and Instagram throughout the event. And we got two speakers for you guys. The first will be Erin, who will be going up, and then we'll have Eugene and Ted from PricewaterhouseCoopers, who will follow up, and we'll go from there. So one last thing, Lee from HoHoTO just has a few words to say.
Great, thanks, Corey. How many people know about HoHoTO, the event that's coming up on December 11th, Saturday? For those of you who don't know, I'm part of a committee. I run a design agency just up the street, but I'm part of a committee that puts on HoHoTO each year. It's a party that's part of for the tech, social media, design industries in Toronto. So it's 500 plus people at the Mod Club that come together every year, but the main gist of it is to support our local community through the Daily Bread Food Bank. So we raise money every year for Daily Bread, and we've been doing it now. We're in year 7. And last year we raised $40,000. We've raised over $300,000 to date. We're doing it again on December 11th, and we're inviting everybody in the community to join us there. Tickets are available now. Early birds are available until the end of the month, and then regular price jumps up to $45 per ticket. 100% of that ticket price goes directly to Daily Bread. So through the volunteer committee and Mod Club donating space and so on, we're able to push 100% of those ticket sales through. So we encourage you guys to support, come out and party with 500 of people in the industry. Main floor is dance, drinking, mingling. Upstairs there's a massive raffle of incredible prizes, from things like tablets and phones to possibly some more interesting tech things like drones this year, but and then beer, wine, packages, stuff like that. So there's some postcards here if you guys want to grab some on the way out for more information. I've also got some buttons here if you want to help promote or have any other questions or suggestions on sponsorship, please ask me.
How much is an early bird ticket, and what is the domain name of the book?
HoHoTO.ca, and all that information as well as on here as far as more information about the party. And the early bird tickets right now are $40. They'll be $45 next week. There are also group tickets. 5 or more people from your organization want to come and turn it into a little mini party, Christmas party within the holiday party for your organization. They're $35 each for 5 or more people. Cool? Thanks.
Cool, thanks, Lee. So where do you want to leave these, Lee? We'll throw them out there after?
Sure.
Okay, so you guys can pick these up outside. All right, so we'll kick off. So the first speaker we have to you, coming live from Tucson, Arizona, is Erin Eden. So Erin's a partner at Moves the Needle. It's an organization. He's a partner there with Brent Cooper, who's written lots of books on kind of lean. The latest book is called The Lean Brand. And Erin is an innovation catalyst and a product manager in his past life, working with Intuit, and has been responsible for launching a whole bunch of lean stuff there. So Erin, I'll let you take it away from here, and for the next half an hour, we'll have a quick chat with Erin, followed up by Ted and Eugene.
Awesome, thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Actually, I can because I can hear myself. All right, cool. I just want to ask a couple of quick questions. I'm going to ask somebody if they can use the microphone so that the feedback doesn't come through. But the first question that I've had is, how many of you folks are enterprise folks? You work for somebody else, probably a big company?
How many
Carlos. Oh, we got more. All right, cool.
Probably about a dozen, Erin.
Thank you. And that's slightly more than half? Something like that. All right, cool. I will I'll incorporate some things that you startup guys can use too. Would somebody do me a favor and mute the mic on the laptop for a second? Or the computer? Just know that I won't be able to hear you for a little bit. Cool. There we go. Always weird hearing yourself. Oh, dim the lights too. Beautiful. All right, cool, guys. So thank you very much for having me tonight. I'm excited to share my journey with you. I thought that based on the conversations with Corey and with Carlos, based on where we thought folks were at, I thought it'd be valuable to share with you my personal journey of applying Lean Startup when I was back at Intuit. I think that really it really exemplifies both the beginnings of getting started with this in your organization, as well as when you get a little bit further along, some of the things you might run into. So I'm not sharing it as a like, oh, look at me, how great it was, all the cool things we did at Intuit. I'm going to try to do my best to share it in a way where you can hopefully take some good nuggets away that you can apply in your situations. So I've left plenty of time for Q&A at the end of this presentation, so that we can hopefully fill any gaps that the presentation doesn't give. So as Corey was saying, previous to founding Moves the Needle, I was a 14-year veteran of Intuit. My background is in business intelligence, data warehousing, software development kind of stuff. I've always been an entrepreneur, but somehow found my way to Intuit and really loved my time there. Oh wait, I need to be sharing my screen so you guys can see. I've got some pretty pictures to go along with the things I'm going to tell you. There we go. Give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen. All right, sweet, thank you. Cool, so there we go. All right, so my background, I've always been an entrepreneur. I launched my first business when I was probably 15. Lots and lots of terrible businesses, a few decent ones, ranging from software development to real estate type businesses to children's entertainment, stuff all over the place. Some of those I ran while I was at Intuit, some of those I ran before and after. And so Intuit was a perfect place for me to really stretch my innovation muscles. I became an innovation catalyst for Intuit a little over 4 years ago. And what that meant is basically that I was responsible for helping employees inside the company to apply design thinking, apply eventually Lean Startup, but originally it was all about design thinking. You can see I've got a nice little description on here of how Intuit thinks about design for delight inside of Intuit. I think this is extremely important and very relevant. But I absolutely loved this type of work. When if you told me 4 years ago that I would not be writing code and that I'd be out sharing these types of stories and presenting to people and teaching and facilitating and those kinds of things, I would have told you were nuts. But really, like, becoming an innovation catalyst for Intuit completely changed the trajectory of my career. And I think it's a huge opportunity for anybody to learn how to apply these principles as well as Lean Startup principles. It leaves you in a position where you can run circles around the other employees, and that's exactly what happened with me. The problem is that I learned that, or not learned, but I kept seeing teams getting stuck in the quicksand, right? I kept seeing them, they'd go off and they'd get what Intuit called customer empathy, right? They'd understand who their customers were, understand the problems, understand those customers' pain points, but very infrequently would those things that they learned be used to actually launch a new business or launch a new product innovation. That oftentimes the ideas would get baked into the products, but not have a big impact, or teams would get stuck in what I called soft and squishy land. They'd say, oh, I learned something new about my customer. I'm going to go back out and learn some more things about my customer, and they just keep going back to this. I don't know how many of you are applying design thinking in your enterprises, but I think it's actually a wonderful jumping off point for applying lean startup. So that's one of the tips I'll give you, is that if your organization is already applying design thinking, it's sort of a natural progression to help them start thinking about some of these other lean startup principles. So I'm now an innovation catalyst. I'm teaching people how to apply design thinking. I'm also out in the community helping with startups and entrepreneurship and things like that. In, I don't know what it was, probably 2010-ish, 2011, somewhere in that ballpark, I learned about lean startup. It's just a little bit before Eric's book comes out. He had been kind of poking his head around Intuit and hearing about some of the things that we were already doing at Intuit, and found this. There was an event happening in San Francisco, which was Lean Startup Machine, and so I signed up to go to the first, or actually I guess it was the second Lean Startup Machine. The first one was in New York, so it was the second Lean Startup Machine, and I met Brent Cooper, met Eric, met Patrick Vlaskovitz, some of these other thought leaders in the space, and totally fell in love with the idea of applying lean startup. I knew absolutely nothing about it except for what I was reading and those few days of practice, but I got super excited about it, and started quickly thinking, hey, if these lean startup principles and these hackathons and that kind of stuff work outside of Intuit, then why wouldn't they work inside of Intuit? I keep seeing this problem where employees get stuck in soft and squishy land. Is this an opportunity to help get them out? And so I started investigating, what it would take to start applying some of these principles inside Intuit. And I quickly came across another colleague who was thinking similarly. He was in Intuit San Diego office and was trying to do the same thing. And since we were both trained design thinking facilitators, we thought, hey, why don't we create our own type of event inside of Intuit, and from there, see if this lean startup stuff will work inside of Intuit. But as is the case with anything, it's likely that we were the pioneers that we're going to end up with arrows in our back, right? In the enterprise, ending up in a situation where you're the guys out front, and the rest of the organization says, that looks totally different. Why don't you guys get the hell out of here? Here's some arrows, right? So we needed to figure out if we were those guys, or if there were other people in the organization that thought like us, and that were interested in this lean startup stuff. And so the first thing that we did was we actually ran a lean startup experiment. So we had this idea for some sort of a workshop or hackathon or that kind of thing, but we had no idea if there were other employees that were interested or cared. And so we found an internal mailing list that had other people, people that were using, people that were sort of known for innovating or for working differently. There was like a design thinking event that had happened, a few months prior, and we were able to get access to that mailing list of employees, and we basically send out an email blast to 50 or 100 employees, however many were on that list, and said, hey, we're hosting our very first lean startup event inside Intuit. It's going to be great. Bring your team and bring an idea, and we're all going to have a good time and apply lean startup together. Click here to accept this meeting invitation. And so we sent that out, and from that first email, we got probably I think there were a total of 10 people that accepted the meeting invitation, said they would come to our training or come to our class, and so like, oh shit, now we actually gotta create a class, right? So we quickly scrambled and put something together and booked a meeting room for a couple days in the Intuit San Diego office. Got approval from my boss to go out for a couple days and try this new lean startup thing, and it turned out that about 8 people showed up to that first class, a few of them were actually able to validate some of their ideas, actually collected some revenue from customers, proved out parts of their business model. Like, we were super excited with the progress that some of these participants were able to make in such a really short amount of time. And so Ben and I kind of stood back at this point and started, trying to eat our own dog food, right? Make sure that we're applying the same principles that we're trying to get teams to apply. So we came up with this list of assumptions that we needed to go test in order to know whether we should do any more of these little workshops or hackathons inside of Intuit. So the first was that there are other employees that have some sort of a pain point, and we hypothesized that pain point was that they didn't know how to commercialize a new innovation inside the company. Like, they had ideas, but they couldn't actually commercialize it. And the next assumption was, well, if we put something out there, they'll actually participate. And so we saw a little bit of anecdotal data that those first two were actually true, that others do have the pain point and others would participate because they actually came to this workshop and we ran it on a Friday and a Monday. We did it as like a 2-day hackathon, but we spanned the weekend, and we did that intentionally to see if any of the employees would actually work over the weekend. And to our surprise, actually all of them put in quite a bit of time over the weekend to continue forward with their projects, even though it was completely not necessary at all. So they were super passionate about it. But then some of the next things we needed to look at was that customers, and I've now changed the term to customers, right? So this is other employees that came to our workshop, that these students or these customers would actually learn the Lean Startup process, right? That not only would they apply it during this workshop, but they would leave and they'd actually apply it in their daily work. The next one is that they'd make significant progress on whatever project they brought to us. And then even later is that we could get senior leadership to come and participate, that we could, that they would actually buy in. Wasn't just a bunch of crazy employees doing this. You could actually get them in. And then beyond that they'll actually invest, they'll spend money on this, they'll apply resources, those kinds of things. These were our initial assumptions that we came up, and we started trying to test these assumptions as quickly as possible. And so after that first event and things went well, we said, well, let's go ahead and run a second event in the Intuit headquarters in Mountain View, California, in Silicon Valley. Maybe we'll get a bigger uptake after this first one, and that's the headquarters. There's more employees, etc. And so we went off to Mountain View and we ran our second event. And in this case, we actually were able to start testing the leadership participation. I actually emailed our CEO, Brad Smith, and said, hey, we ran this first Lean Startup event in San Diego. Here are some of the outcomes that resulted from us running it. It seems to have worked really well. I've heard you mention in some of your public talks and things like that with the company that you're interested in Lean Startup. Would you be willing to come to one of our next events as a judge? And actually, he emailed back within a few hours and said, yeah, if I'm available, I'd be happy to come be a judge. Work with my admin to see if the dates that you're selecting are something that would work for me. And it actually turned out he did come and he was a judge for that second event. The second event, we ended up with like 12 teams that came to participate in the second event. So for two of us to try and facilitate 12 teams was absolute madness. And not only that, but I hadn't really done many events in Mountain View, and so I didn't know which meeting rooms to book, and I ended up booking a meeting room that was too small, so we're like crammed in there, and like it was good and bad. But anyway, the second event went really, really well also, and got really good feedback from the CEO, and so we went back to the drawing board and said, great, we've done 2 of these events. We think that some of these assumptions have been proven true. We're seeing teams making progress. We got leadership participating. Next is we need some sort of investment, because we had done both of these totally, in corporate dollars, like pretty much for free, right? Except for like ordering some posters to put up on the wall, maybe some Post-its and Sharpies, right? Like we didn't spend a lot of money on this. A little bit in travel costs, but really negligible in the grand scheme of things. And so So we decided to set off to test this last assumption on this list, which was that leadership will actually invest. And we came up with this crazy idea that we were going to do what we called the Lean Start In World Tour. So that's what we were calling Lean Startup Inside Intuit. We called it Lean Start In. And we said we're going to launch 100 startups inside Intuit in 100 days, right? We just, in these 2 events, we had a total of probably 15, 16 teams that had participated. We said, hell, we can let's do 100 of those in 100 days. We're going to go hit every Intuit location, and we're going to train 10 teams at every location. And so Ben, being an awesome designer, whipped up some stickers and some logos, and you can see that on the screen. So in 2012, we kicked off the world tour. And in this case, in order to be able to do that, we needed some actual budget, right? We needed to leadership needed to put some skin in the game. And so we went to some of the existing folks on the innovation team, and we said, hey, here's the results of what we've done so far. There's some, it seems to be pretty promising. People are making progress. They seem to be launching new businesses. We want $50,000 to go hit these different sites, and that'll basically cover the travel costs for us to hit these different locations. We'll still do it on the cheap. We'll do it on site at the different locations, we'll have the local site pay for the lunch. We won't even pull that out of your budget. And the leadership team agreed to that. Said, yeah, we'll be willing to do that. Erin, this is not your day job, so you need to get approval from your boss to go on this crazy tour and do all these different things. So I had to find some interesting ways to try to tie that into my day job. So we embarked on this crazy tour, in the 100 days over the course of that summer of 2012, we actually were able to rally about 82 teams across Intuit. So 3 to 4 people per team, actually we did a really big event right after the 100-day window ended that put us at like 140, but it didn't count. It wasn't inside that window. But I think 82 out of 100 is pretty damn good for two crazy guys running around trying to teach this stuff. And the story continued from there. We did lots and lots more. That really. For me personally, I ended up winning an award from the CEO, as did Ben, and really, it opened up all kinds of doors from a career perspective. And I think a lot of what happened there is the reason that I started getting pull from other companies to help them with applying Lean Startup inside other organizations. But now I'm going to share a couple nuggets here. So I already talked about that the results of just that summer push. Was 82 teams, 400 plus employees, about 50 leaders were involved in that and changed some of their mindsets. It had millions of dollars in financial impact for the company, like measurable impact. And so I'll talk about in a little bit like some things you guys can look out for how to make that happen. A couple surprises, happier employees. So we actually took all of the names of all of the employees that went through the training and bounced that across the database that has all of our annual survey data. Like, oftentimes employees get surveyed, how happy are you? Are you going to leave and go work for another company, whatever. We actually found that employees had significant boosts in their scores after having gone through this. So it was really empowering those employees to go and run their own experiments. And where to go from there. And then, of course, it created lots of happier customers. When you're reaching out and trying to understand what your customers need, they absolutely love that, and it helped all over the place. So a couple insights, things to watch out for. So this is a little bit of both positive and negative. One thing we discovered really early on was that if we didn't influence the leadership, employees would actually leave and go work for startups, which is definitely not what you want when taking on an endeavor like this in your organization. What was happening is they got super excited. They felt like they actually had control of things and they could go and run experiments and get data and these kinds of things. And then their leadership, whoever their manager or further up was would kind of push them back into the old way of working, and they'd get frustrated, and they say, well, I can actually go do this at a startup. And so as you're applying this into your organizations, I think it's super important to make sure that you're not only teaching the employees how to behave this way, but you've got to teach the leaders how to behave this way as well. It's actually a different set of skills for both groups, and so if you don't do that, you're either going to upset the employees or run the risk of having them leave. When you compare applying Lean Startup in the enterprise to a more traditional innovation method, traditional innovation method is all about the ideas, and Lean Startup is all about the employees, all about the people and the capabilities of those employees. A kick-ass Lean Startup team inside the enterprise can take any idea and pivot and change it and adjust it to make it work, but a team that doesn't get this just won't be successful. So it becomes all about the people and much less about the idea. I already talked about the leadership stuff. The other thing we found was that you sort of think about a company culture as like one culture, but one thing we really learned was that there are many, many subcultures inside any company, and so you've got to learn how to navigate each of these subcultures, and the way that these subcultures apply Lean Startup principles in their work actually is different, and so you've got to watch out for those differences. We were able to actually leverage a lot of like offsites, right? So you have like a VP or an SVP that pulls all of his team together or her team together every 6 months to like go spend 2 or 3 days offsite. We were able to actually piggyback on some of those events to teach those folks about Lean Startup principles without them feeling like they were spending extra time off somewhere else. And then meeting employees where they are. This means that, you know, in some cases you had employees that didn't understand how to go and actually get customer empathy or understand their customers deeply. So we'd have to teach them that before jumping into experimentation. Or maybe you've got teams that have a project that's further along, so you've got to help them from a different point. So don't assume that this is like a standard training program. You actually have to customize whatever you're going to do to meet the employees where they are. And then the only way Ben and I were able to be successful with this was that we actually started growing and developing others inside the company. So we started training other mentors and other folks to be able to teach and coach others inside the organization. And like, even though I'm not with Intuit anymore, like I hear stories all the time of folks that are still continuing to push this forward and are actually making huge impact as a result. So you know, changing a large organization is a huge endeavor. You can't do it yourself. So developing others is really what you've got to do. So from day one, you should be looking for, you know, who are the people that really get this, and how can I ignite them, and how can I grow them so that they can continue to build this inside the organization. All right. So a couple quick links for you guys. I want to just say that, like, I've seen, you know, dozens and dozens of employees that apply these principles really well inside their organizations, getting promoted, like I said, like running circles around the other employees, and I think this is a huge opportunity. So I'm hoping in the Q&A I'll hear from you guys as to, like, you know, where you are personally in this journey. Are you kind of at the beginning and trying to figure out where to start, or are you even beyond like the story that I've shared, and really much further in this adventure? Moves the needle. We've got a couple tools. We've got an experiment map to help you with tracking your experiments. We've got tools for helping you narrow in on your customers. We've got tools for helping you apply behavioral economics, all kinds of different stuff. So that top link at movestheneedle.com/tools. Check that out. All of them are free. We give them away. We just trade for an email address. So, and then there's some Twitter accounts there, and I've listed Brant's books on the screen as well. But you know, I just want to challenge, for those of you that are in the enterprise, I want to challenge you to really take this on and push this forward. Your enterprise needs you. Like, disruption is happening every single day in every single organization, and if they don't have somebody that can help them get through this, eventually the organization will die. So for those of you that are passionate about this, this is your opportunity to actually rescue your organization from a potentially nasty future. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. I'll switch that back on in a little bit if you guys have anything. But so, where can I dive deeper?
Erin, I've got a question. So, I guess like a big thing that is a challenge in large enterprises is getting the leadership on board and seeing how maybe coming out of these events and stuff, continuing to run experiments and try and get growth within, let's say, new ideas or new products and stuff. Can be very, very challenging if the leadership is not necessarily on board. And so, like, what are some techniques or experiments or things that you can do to maybe, help with that, to get leaders on board?
Yeah, the way that I would approach it is that you should actually approach your leadership just like a customer. So I'm sharing on the screen here the framework that I like to use to describe what lean innovation actually looks like. You can see on the left-hand side, you start with customer empathy. So this is understanding your target customers really, really well, like down at an emotional level. And so the way that we approached it with senior leaders that were not on board was I would sit down with the senior leader and have a conversation with them to understand what pain points they had, what were problems they were running into in their organization. Was it speed to market? Was it employees that weren't happy enough? Was it that they couldn't get their net promoter score up? Was it having a hard time balancing their short-term goals and their long-term goals, right? Like, so understanding from that leader what pain points they had with their organization or with their situation, and then having all of this data around the impact that these different events were able to make, I would then be able to frame this as something that would solve a problem for them. And so sometimes it would take, sometimes they wouldn't agree to let us come and do some sort of an event with their employees just based on that. Sometimes what I would do is I'd actually invite them to like the end of another event we were already doing, and I'd ask them to come be a judge at the event. And what happens is that they see how much impact these employees make in such a short amount of time, and they get really, really excited about it. And then when you talk to them about how this might solve their problems, or when they talk to other employees that are participating, then they actually see it, right? So instead of trying to convince the leadership, you have to actually show them that this is a better way of working, and that this is going to be beneficial to their organization. But you can't do that if you don't understand what problem you're solving for them personally and for their organization.